Good morning, everybody. Thank you, John Ullman, for that introduction and for your leadership and for your friendship. Thank you, Dr. Coleman and Dean Wong, and to the College Guidance Quartet, Mr. Momo, Mr. Riley, Mr. Milton, Ms. Gonzalez. Thank you for the invitation and the talk therapy. To all the Trinity teachers, thank you for the profession you chose and that you carry it off with such dedication and care for the children we love. And to the parents out there, please join me in prayer that I can make it through this in one piece. Now, to the Trinity Class of 2022 with whom I have some good business today. Would you please let me know the contours of where you're sitting by making some noise so that I know exactly where to direct my remarks? As John Baptiste would say, I don't know you, but I love you. You are smart and you are clever and you are resourceful. You are resourceful because you made it through 2 years of a pandemic, and you are resourceful because I've seen some of your fake IDs. Such craftsmanship. Who knew the 21-year-olds of South Carolina spent so much time in Manhattan? I think it's the museums. A little roadmap of our talk today. I'm a working journalist, so I interview people. What I'll say today will come out of my mouth, but it's essentially what I know from interviewing people for 30 years. It will be in 3 acts. The first act, I will torture a metaphor about meaning, well, not torture, vigorous Pilates to a metaphor about meaning. Act 2, I will explain why it was worth putting that metaphor through that, and then Act 3, I will try and give you what sometimes we call advice, but which you'll know what to call it in the end. It's a grace to be asked to try to come up with some words for here today, and I hope my length is seen as an act of love. I feel like I shouldn't be here, though, because as the Trinity Class of 2022 knows, if you're going to write, you want to show and not tell. Right? Nan Dickerson is embarrassed. That's telling. Nan Dickerson reddened like a fire truck. That's showing. Though the prose is a little purple. So, and the thing I would seek to show and not tell is that today is a great handover. You're going to take the wheel more firmly in your life now, after this day, and time is going to change. In the previous years of your life, and all the days of the year, you spent the majority of them with your parents. That will change when you go to college, and for the rest of your life, the majority of the days you will spend without your parents. So, if I were trying to show this handover today and not just tell it, I would actually hand the speech over to you and let you give it. It would be so awkward. Some of you would rush the stage, some wouldn't know to come up here, some would go over there. It would be very hard to find your place, just like college. A messy scramble to find your place and your voice while the person behind the lectern does stuff to confuse your parents. But I can't do that because they've given me this robe, so I have to go through this. This robe, which, by the way, as I experience it right now, is my own little portable sweat lodge. So instead of giving you the speech, I'd like you to give the speech with me. And that's our metaphor. Follow it like a leopard. Any speech is a collaboration between an audience and a speaker. A person speaking alone in a room is not giving a speech. It's just me on a Saturday night. But today is more than any old speech. It's a speech of meaning, which is much more intense. This occasion calls on us to come up with some understanding of our life and ourselves. And any direction you look, there is meaning. If we look in the past, we are called to make meaning about how we got here. Your parents' sacrifice, your hard work, the dedication of your teachers. If you look ahead in time, we're of course called to make meaning, to try ball it up into some piece of advice that you can take away with you. And your parents, they are out there making big meaning. They're thinking about when you were just a mewing little blob so many years ago, and these pictures on the monitors are not helping. Or they're thinking, wait, I was just in this ceremony myself at this age. What the hell happened to the time? Dan Pink, who wrote a best-selling book about regret, came up with the topic for the book while he was sitting in his daughter's graduation. It's a day for big meaning, which means we ask questions. What does it mean to be true? What do we value? How do we love? How do we find purpose? If you had to get out of here fast, could you use the window? A speech of meaning confers an obligation on the audience. Meaning is not made by me just pelting you and you being passive. Fortunately, there is no danger on this earth that you're going to be passive. Your teachers literally dedicated their life to teaching you how to engage with ideas, how to put your hands on these words. So we do honor to them if you engage with what I say, which doesn't, of course, mean agree, which your teachers also taught you. So take what I say and that you like and keep it and discard the piffle. And hope there's more of the former than the latter. If you engage, that's how we'll give this speech together. And we even have the architecture working for us. There's something called the cathedral effect, which means when you're in a setting like this, words tend to take on celestial height. Now, I wrote this speech in an attic where the height of the ceiling is about 8 feet. And the organ music was Columbus Avenue. So if this speech is going to get any lift at all, it requires you to give it meaning. And the reason I belabor this co-authorship is in this moment of making meaning is because I've come to believe that a rich life is one in which you carry that idea of being the author of your own meaning out of this place with you. It is a part of today, but it is not just about today. Take it out like your diploma. Don't just treat this moment as a memory or some turnstile that you passed through or jumped over. Take it as a habit. You can make meaning without the fancy architecture and the robes. How, you ask? First, I'm glad you're taking the collaboration seriously. One of the things that makes today feel meaningful is that we are in the place where we are supposed to be. We're where we're meant to be right now, and through a complex set of actions, it feels right. It opens us up. It makes us feel generous. You smile more quickly, and all the forces that conspire to ball the day up into a tiny little fist, they are held at bay. And that is because our purpose and our value is in sync with our actions, and that makes meaning, and that feels solid. So how do you access that feeling when you're not in this room? Ask yourself this question anytime during the day. Am I where I am supposed to be right now? Am I the person I want to be right now? If you check in with that idea, it will orient you. It will clarify you. I learned about this question from your future. I write about leadership and presidencies, and I've been lucky enough to be on a phone call for the last 2 years, once a month, of leaders of the kind that you will be. Leaders in education, business, the arts. They get on this phone call and they bring each other puzzles to solve with these other leaders. A lot of times it's things like, how do you deal with a board of directors? But more often than not, they are questions of meaning. Why do I do what I do? What drives me? How can I put more energy towards what feeds my soul? And the search for meaning is so important among these leaders that they often have their employees, when they start at their companies or businesses or schools, go through exercises. One, for example, when you're starting as a new employee, write the retirement speech you'd like to be given when you retire, or write the eulogy you'd like to have given at your funeral. I learned yesterday in Mr. Schmidt's beautiful speech that those of you at Trinity already know this because apparently his English class is called One Brief Flicker Before the Grave. But the whole point of this, and what Mr. Schmidt was trying to teach you, is that you can be the author of meaning now. And when you think about it in the light of eternity, you can start writing now. And on these phone calls, these people kept coming back to this question: am I the person I want to be right now? You can ask it in small ways. Say you're in an argument like me, and you're just really waiting for the other person to stop so you can prove how right you are. And to the extent you're listening at all, it's mostly for ammunition that you can fire back at them. If you ask yourself in that moment, am I the person I want to be right now? You might change and open up and listen to what they're saying. And you might shift into listening into a way that might actually change the way you think. And at the very least, you will stop treating them as your enemy and treat them with dignity. You can also ask this question in enormous ways. When you're sitting down, when you go to the office and you sit down to work, am I the person I want to be right now? That can be, is this the firm I want to work for, the job I want, the city I want, the profession I want? What you mean when you ask this question and when you answer it, that's up to you. After this handover today, you get 4 years or more in college to learn how to ask and answer that question. Richard Hugo, the poet, started his college poetry writing class telling his students, "I hope I don't teach you how to write, but to teach yourself how to write." So I'd like to expand that to the entire world. I hope you don't find meaning at college. Rather, I hope you teach yourself how to create meaning. Because it's like learning how to write. You don't just learn how to do it. It's a process, and you'll be teaching yourself how to find meaning your whole life. Act 2, 3 practical reasons for going through all this business. First, it will help you choose. After this handover, you're going to have more choices than you ever had, and the rest of your life is going to be basically facing more and more choices. Thinking is for doing. The whole point of introspection through this question is to drive action. So when faced with a choice, one way to test the decision is to say, would the person I want to be make the choice the way I just did? Or ask, will this choice put me in a situation where I'm the person I want to be? Every time you ask that question to yourself, you have a conversation between your ego and your values. And if you don't have any values, you get some. Because this question faces you to come up with a why you're doing what you've chosen to do. Each time you find a why for what you're doing, you learn a little bit more about the contours of yourself, your emotional, moral, ethical architecture that drives action in your life. And the great joy of college is that you can try on different worldviews like a hat. And the worldview is how you sort the answer to this question. So here's a worldview I like from Kurt Vonnegut. Adore the universe, be easily delighted, impatient with what doesn't seem true. So when you ask, am I the person I want to be, answer it the way a person does who adores the universe, is easily delighted and impatient with what doesn't seem true. Steve Jobs of Apple liked the worldview, stay hungry, stay foolish. How would that person answer that question? Or maybe you'll be lucky enough to just try on the worldview, serve others. These worldviews are what make action through daily habit. This is how you get these worldviews in your life. Motivational posters will say, optimism is a choice, happiness is a choice. Through asking yourself this question, that's how you make optimism and happiness a choice in your life. The second reason to ask this question is that it will keep you wired to joy. If you ask this question, you'll start to take note of when the answer is yes, when your soul is in continuity with the agitations of the world. Whether it's long talks with friends, playing guitar out on the grass, or reading until you've forgotten to eat dinner. And when you do that, you'll conclude, I want to do more of this. The founder of this church, Harry Emerson Fosdick, said, or the first senior pastor, said, our real goodness was not flogged into us, but was drawn out in us by the appeal of something lovely and right to which we respond. This question is the regular call and response that helps you follow the lovely and the right. The third reason to ask yourself this question is based on the principle articulated by Snoop Dogg. Stay ready, don't have to get ready. Or for your grandparents here not familiar with Mr. Dogg's work, Hamlet, who also worked in rhyming couplets. Hamlet said, readiness is all. The moments are coming when you're going to want to practice this process of teaching yourself meaning. So you might as well get started now. Because at the moment, the grades you get give you focus in your life. As imperfect as they are, you're either doing well or you're not doing well, and you know how to adjust. Work hard, get good grades, pick up your promising future at window number 2. When you get out of college, there are no grades, so how do you know whether you're on the right path or not? How do you know how to adjust? If you have a structure, it helps you learn how to adjust. That's one future to prepare for. The other future to prepare for is when you are graded after college, but you're given adult grades. And adult grades are interesting because they're based on madness. If you're in broadcast television, for example, you'll learn about ratings. In business, you'll learn about consensus earnings estimates. If you're in civilization, you'll be told about the number and kind of cars, handbags, tailored shirts, and watches you should own that determine what kind of a person you are. And if you don't know this, a salesman will be with you shortly. Prestige, which is the opinion of others, is powerful and usually metaphysically unrelated to purpose and meaning. If you have a system of meaning as provisional and messy as it is, it'll help keep you from linking yourself to your job or your possessions. Colin Powell said, avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. So ask this question to make choices, give yourself grades, and stay ready. Act 3, advice. Oh boy. So before I get to Act 3 and lump some advice on you, I want you to know that I don't want to rob you. Parents can be thieves with their advice. I know this because I've been essentially writing this speech for 19 years, since Bryce was born. At first, the writing was just emotional. When you have kids and you're a writer, there is an enzyme released that makes you think you are the very first person to have had children. Suddenly, you are Paul Revere, and you have a duty to inform everyone about the wonder of parenthood. Did you know that when a baby falls on the bed, the Moro reflex causes their arms to fly up like they're conducting a symphony? Sir, this is a Starbucks. As the kids get older, this mix of love makes a writer want to write all this down and give them advice. I mean, life is hard, so write it down and help smooth the way for them. So I started writing down some notes and things that I would send Bryce and Nan. Lucky devils. But then when Nan was going off to camp at age 9, I wrote a piece about it. I'm a writer, everything is copy. And I interviewed a few child psychologists, and one of them was a man named Michael Thompson who wrote a book called Homesick and Happy. It's about going to camp. And in the book, there was this amazing finding. They interviewed adults, and they said, what is the one memory that is the most powerful, engaging, fabulous memory of your childhood? And overwhelmingly, it was a memory where parents were not there, were not involved. Oh. The best stuff comes when we, as parents, aren't there, either in person or with our frothy advice. It's not that the advice is bad, it's just more real when they've had a chance to earn the lesson themselves. As Dickerson said, all gifts tend to pauperize the recipient. The best thing we can do is help kids get to a place where we aren't, so that they can thrive without us. So it turns out that parenting is just teaching your kids how to leave you, which is what's happening today. But that also means they have a richer life if we don't rob them. Even when parents have good advice, it's always ill-timed. So for example, when one door closes, another door opens. This is absolutely true. I've lived it, it's totally true. But if you dispense this advice right after a door is closed in your child's face, they will shove you out the first available door, even if the car is moving. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Also true. Said at the wrong time, you're inviting a homicide. So I stopped writing Bryce and Nan, which will surprise Bryce and Nan, because they'll be like, wait, what about all those emails you sent? To which I would say two things. One, you never read them. And two, I only sent a quarter of what I wrote. But the fear of robbing you is why I like this question, am I the person I want to be? Because it's specific enough to take out into the world, and yet it leaves a lot of room for your authorship, maybe a maddening amount of room. But if you are a regular author of this question, you will find durable meaning. The aid we have from others is mechanical, said Emerson, compared with the discoveries of nature in us. That's what you're after, the discoveries of nature in yourself. So here's some advice. Let yourself off the hook. Yates says the most important debates are with ourselves. So if that's true, it's going to be a long debate, and you want to be nice to the other person. When you ask yourself, am I the person I want to be right now, don't let the question get so big that you can't handle it. The reason to ask yourself this question all the time is to break it down into little acts like exercise or meditation. You do a little bit every day. The daily habit is what you're looking for. These questions won't be manageable if you let them grow big enough to fill this room. So carry this question around you in your pocket like a nickel, and be good to yourself when you answer. This is psychological advice, but it's also central to what this process is. It is a creative process, and creative processes are messy. That's why Frank Gehry, the architect, said, if I knew what I was going to do next, I wouldn't do it. Susan Orlean said about writing, if a story ends up just like you imagined, you've done something wrong. It should surprise the writer. The uncertainty of this question, and you're asking it and answering it, the uncertainty is instilled in the question. It's a part of the process. So it's a signal you're doing it right. Let yourself off the hook. Second piece of advice, headlights. One way to be easy on yourself is not to rush to answer questions you aren't facing yet. Answer the questions before you. One of the best metaphors for life I've ever read was from E.L. Doctorow, the writer, who said, "Writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You can see only as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way." By all means, dream, and dream big. But you don't have to see your destination to get there. You just have to see a few feet in front of you. For those of you who are sick of hearing about writers and architects, and Lincoln said the same thing. Lincoln said, "The pilots on our western rivers steer from point to point, setting the course of the boat no further than they can see. And that is all I propose myself in this great problem." Number 3, don't be a ruminant. In the last year, you've done a lot of work and you've done a lot of worrying. And I think there's a combination between the two, but the benefits of the combination needs to be a little clearer than the way we usually talk about these two things. Occasionally, people will tell you, and maybe you've heard this yourself, don't worry. I have slightly different advice. Worry. There is a lot to worry about. But worry means you care. You care about yourself, and you care about the thing you worry about. If you love, perhaps the greatest thing in the world, love comes with a sidecar of worry. Ask your parents. So worry, but know how to worry. Mark Twain said, "Find a job you love, and you will never work a day in your life." No. I think if you take that advice, it will cause you to look for something that does not exist on this planet. Work you love requires hard work. And if you love something, you will worry. The way to dispel the worry is with the work, which is the application of care and concern to worry. If you are ambitious, you will have self-doubt, which is hot worry. So cool it down with work. This is how to make your nervous system your ally and not your enemy. So I think the heading is not Twain's, but find a vocation that is worth your worry and your work. Now, the danger comes from rumination. That's the debilitating worry. You obsess about things you can't control, where you worry about scenarios that haven't happened and probably won't ever happen, and it's paralyzing. So keep this distinction between worrying and rumination in mind. I once interviewed somebody for a story who said that a vague email from a boss had been sent to them. It was something like, "See me at the end of the day." And they described worry. They said, "It made me eat my stomach all day," which I thought was a pretty good expression for worry. Now, a ruminant has a 4-chambered stomach. So the distinction between worry and rumination is eat one stomach, don't eat 4. Fourth piece of advice, pack like John Lewis. Whenever you interviewed John Lewis, the civil rights hero, it was always an interview about meaning, because he had lived such a towering life of courage and hope and faith. And once when we were talking, there was a picture of him at the Edmund Pettus Bridge marching for voting rights, right before a billy club cracked his skull. And in this picture, he's the only person wearing a backpack. And I asked him why he had a backpack, and he said, well, he expected to go to jail for marching for his rights. And so he packed for the journey. And in his backpack, he put the 7-story mountain, which is the story of Catholic monk Thomas Merton. He packed a political science book, The American Political Tradition by Richard Hofstadter. And he packed an apple, something for the head, the heart, and the body. So pack all 3. You've probably been given advice about risk. Take risks. Got to take risks. Take the leap. Risk. What does that mean? I always felt this was very vague advice, so I spent a half a year interviewing people who took enormous risks. Here's what I learned. Understand what a risk is. A Marine colonel told me what they're taught is the difference between a risk and a gamble. You can get out of a risk if it goes wrong. A gamble, there's no going back. A risk is trying out for a student film or falling in messy, confusing, wonderful love. A gamble is getting in a car with somebody who's driving you know shouldn't be driving, or taking a pill that was not given to you by your doctor. 6th piece of advice, also about risk. Leap on yes. So taking risks is good because it puts you at your limits. And when you're at your limits, you learn things that are true. But how do you know where the limit is? If you ask this question, am I being the person I want to be right now? A lot of times the answer is going to be no. But as you inch up on no, you get a vision of what yes looks like, what the person who says yes looks like. So just go be that person. They're standing right there. You've asked this question. You've become familiar with who they are. You can embody them. That's why you ask this question, because the point of this question is to take action. And when you do make that leap, because you've asked yourself this question, you will know why you took the leap. And that's very nourishing, because what they don't tell you on the motivational posters is once you take the leap, it's really hard the next period of time. But he who has a why can bear almost any how. And here's something you can test with your life. That author Dan Pink I was telling you about earlier wrote this book on regret. And what he found in the social science is that regrets were stronger among people who didn't take a leap in their life. Those regrets were stronger than the regrets of people who did take a leap and failed. Because it turns out your imagination about what good things could have happened had you taken that leap is more powerful than the bad feeling you might get about having taken a leap and had it gone wrong. Final point about risk. Down climbing is a part of climbing. Bryce and Ann and I used to go climbing, and their mother used to go climbing with a guy named Eli Simon. And when he wasn't climbing with people who could only go 10 feet in the air, he was going thousands of feet in the air in Patagonia to put up roots up in the air that no human had ever done before. And I interviewed him, and he was telling me a story about one time he was thousands of feet up in the air in Patagonia, and they'd been climbing for more than 20 hours because the weather was so bad, they were worried that if they stopped, it would close in around them, and they'd be stuck on this sheer wall with ice and snow, and it would imperil their lives. So more than 20 hours, the only thing they can see is what's illuminated by their headlamp. And they're climbing up, and they reach a head wall. They reach so much rock and ice that they can't go any further. More than 20 hours, tired, cold, in the dark. At which point, if I were narrating the story, I would have said, and then we died. But this is the way Eli told the story. He said, and then we reached the point where we came to the head wall, and down climbing is a part of climbing, so we down climbed a few hundred feet and found another way to ascend. And then he went on to tell the story. He described down climbing, which meant many more hours of climbing down to then go back up, as if it were as easy as changing a t-shirt. They didn't freak out at the obstacle. They didn't get reckless or rush. They approached their journey with the recognition that the route is never straight. Down climbing is a part of climbing. That's the key feature. And they didn't see the setback as cosmic affirmation of their unworthiness. They saw it as a part of the journey. Ralph Ellison said, humanity is won by continuing to play in the face of certain defeat. Last piece of advice. No shots that come in glasses. I think you know what I'm talking about. Do not listen to Lin-Manuel Miranda. Throw away your shot. Drunk Hamilton would have gotten nothing done. The only time you should take shots is when you've liberated your country from the oppressors or you've defeated the robot army. Not that robots are bad. I say that because they're listening. I hope that some of that advice was useful and points you towards figuring out how to author a rich life. But I also hope it's useful because, oh boy, do we need you. A door is opened and let in a really scary future. Old truths and institutions and public forms of adjudicating disputes are up for grabs, largely as a result of a systematic attack on the very nature of truth. And this is happening just at the time that the challenges of climate change, gun violence, racial injustice, economic and education inequality are getting more complicated. And across the world, the stitching is coming undone. We need the music you will create. We need the medicines you will discover. We need the answers you will bring. We need the questions you will ask. We need your fresh wonder. We need the gifts to the enterprise of human progress that you will bring. You endured a terrible pandemic period that will affect your lives in ways that we don't know. But there is reason to hope because of something that was available to you that was not our generation. The sharpening that comes from that experience. The political book that John Lewis was carrying in his backpack starts with a quote from the writer John Dos Passos. In times of change and danger, when there is quicksand of fear under men's reasoning, a sense of continuity with the generations gone before can stretch like a lifeline across the scary present. John Lewis's life offers that lifeline, but there's also a lifeline from a previous time that stretches to your generation. The last generation that went through a global plague. Here are some of the people who were 18 in the year 1918. Langston Hughes, Margaret Mead, John Steinbeck, Ansel Adams, Alice Neal, Marlene Dietrich. The preacher who first preached at this church, Harry Emerson Fosdick, said, "Some eras are like a lullaby, some are like a spur. Which in the end will be greater?" You have the answer, and you'll know what to do, and our generation will be better for it. Now, long listening is hungry work, so I'm going to close with a story about coffee, which some of you may need by now. There's at least one time of the day where I am supposed to be. It's in the morning when I'm making coffee for Nan. 2 shots of espresso, oat milk. I believe as a general rule that parents should not talk to their children until they wait 1 minute for every year that child has been alive. And that's 18 minutes for Nan. She gets up 5 minutes before school. So the coffee exchange happens the way secrets were passed during the Cold War. Important handoff without human interaction. Coffee means I love you, have a good day. I make it for her, but of course I make it for me. I don't mean I make my cup of coffee, I mean when I make her, you knew that. One of the benefits of feeling like you're where you are supposed to be in any given moment is that it opens you up to revelation. And so one day when I was making coffee for Nan, I had a revelation about my mother-in-law, Betty McKeon, and the coffee she offers me every time we go to Tennessee. My mother-in-law is very generous. She loves to make a fuss over us, particularly because we live far away. When we come to visit, she makes a fuss, and she always offers me coffee. And I say, no thanks, I can make it myself. And frankly, I'm a 53-year-old man. I can make my own damn coffee. And I can also make my own spectacular failures of emotional intelligence. My mother-in-law wants to make coffee for me for the same reasons I make coffee for Nan. The person she wants to be is to be a nurturer for her family that lives far away. So to say no to the coffee is to deny her a version of the love that I feel each morning. And so the revelation is this: how easy it is to make meaning by being awake to the needs of those around us. The easiest way to be the person you want to be is to do something that helps someone else feel like they are being the person they are meant to be. To the stranger, that they are seen, that they are human, that they are worthy of attention. With your family, ask yourself, am I being the person I want to be for this person I love? When your brother calls, the person you are in the moment may not want to answer the phone because he's just going to complain. But the person you want to be picks up the phone because you want to be there for him and you want to love him. Even when we're doing something we don't really want to do, we can do it as the person we want to be. And sometimes that can mean just reminding someone you love of who they already are, which is a basic thing, but sometimes we need it because we feel lost a lot of the time. This is a platform we all have. In any moment, it's always available under our feet to put us where we're supposed to be, and in the bargain, make someone else feel that way too. Or at the very least, let them know that in this jagged world, there is a backstop of love. And maybe that's the showing and not all this telling of parenting. We may not be able to deliver piercing advice or even want to, but we can convey that love. And I came across this idea in one of those letters I never sent to Nan and Bryce. I'm not writing just for you, I'm writing for me. I don't know what I believe until I write it down, and you never write with more meaning than when you do it for love. And maybe that's the message of all this advice that it's really meant to send. I want you to know that you are not alone. Sometimes when you're digging out or feeling lonesome or grieving or meaning is stuck on the crosstown bus, knowing you're not alone is a comfort. You're still going to have to dig out, but knowing that you're not alone can make the digging out something you can get through. I never sent that note, though I guess I just did. Class of 2022, you're not alone. And after today's handover, that's a message you can send yourself. Because in a few months, I won't make coffee for Nan. We'll hear footsteps on the stairs and there won't be anybody there. We won't have to wait up late at night. So my final point is a request. At some point, your parents will be overcome with a look like they're about to tell you the dog died, which will be weird because you don't even own a dog. When you see this look, go easy on us. We'll still be getting used to the idea that where we are meant to be is the place somewhere different than where you are. Good luck, congratulations, and thanks for giving the speech with me.